He's been doing well in the one days. In the I'm not even going to try and pronounce what it is. I can't remember what the tournament is. Kahari or Rosario, Ranji, whatever. It's
You're
been
doing very well in the
one-day
comments
tournament.
for that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Hello and welcome back to the Cricket Nerds. It's me and Zach today, and we've got an interesting episode. We've got things from India to Australia, from New Zealand to England, and then we've got a few Cricket Nerds questions. So stay tuned. This is going to be a good one. Thank you so much for the continued support. We're well on track for 1,000 subscribers. That's our goal. Please help us reach 1,000 before the end of the year. That's it's got to be the aim. We can do it. I'm sure of it. So yeah, thank you so much for the continued support. So first things first, India versus New Zealand. It's been a rain-affected bilateral series, and I'm a bit disappointed by the rain affecting it because the second T20, which is the only one they actually played, like all the way through, was really good, mostly because of Surya Kumar Yadav. But yeah, they had a draw by DLS. What were your thoughts of that game, Zach?
It was actually annoying about the rain because it was setting itself up to be a really good one. Because New Zealand had batted really well, then SIRAJ brought it all back, and then it was that really nice score that we like, that 160.
Yeah, I was excited.
Causes the chasing team problems, but because India were doing okay, but they were. I think it was setting itself up to be a really close one with 11 overs left, them needing another 80 odd runs. New Zealand have some pretty good bowlers. So yeah, and they didn't have many wickets in hand. So yeah, it was looking like a really good game. However, if we go from the start, I think New Zealand actually were looking pretty good, especially with Devon Conway and Glenn Phillips, their partnership. I thought Glenn Phillips, he carried on his form from the World Cup, playing a very good 50. And then Devon Conway, who's not really done much since the first game of the group stage in the World Cup. And then he ended up getting a 50 as well. And they were looking quite solid. They'd set a really nice platform. And then Mohammad Siraj just broke the back of that innings completely, which was awesome to watch.
It was. And yet another terrible collapse from New Zealand. If you look at the scores from Daryl Mitchell down, Daryl Mitchell down the scorecard was the only person to reach double figures. After him, the highest score was Tim Southey with 6. It was a terrible collapse, and it was absolutely amazing bowling by Siraj. He's got this gift where as soon as there's anything that he can extract from that pitch, be it seam or swing or bounce, he will use it to full effect. And that's a really good talent to have, because as soon as he identifies anything, which he does quite well, it's a good talent of his, it means that he will use those conditions really well. When conditions aren't in his favor, that's where we've seen him go for a lot of runs. And that's something that I think he'll learn to control that as he goes on in his career. But for now, being able to capitalize on it when it is in your favor, that's such a good gift. And that's really good for India going forward.
Yeah. And I think with India, they've got, as we've said many times, they've got a real depth in talent, bowling talent, especially given the number of fast bowlers that India produces now compared to 15, 20 years ago. It's ridiculous. And Mohammad Siraj is just one of those products of someone who has just improved and been picked as a youngster, and he's looking really solid. Arshdeep Singh getting 4 wickets, pretty good. Bowling all right. But yeah, I think New Zealand, they were a bit blown away because they had that solid platform, which was perfect for someone like James Neesham and Mitch Santner. But I think the issue with New Zealand is they don't really have the finishers. I think that's what they're lacking at the moment, because Jimmy Neesham hasn't been consistent for a while now. And Mitch Santner he's not a 200 strike rate batter at the death, is he? And then they're relying on someone like Adam Milne. So they've not got much down the order, and that's what they're lacking in their team at the moment. So they almost need to find someone who can fill that role for them. But then when we come on to India's batting, New Zealand bowled well actually to start with, in restricting India and also getting some key wickets. For example, Suryakumar Yadav, he's definitely the key. Sodhi did pretty well getting him out. And then we know Shreyas Iyer can't, Suryakumar Yadav can't fire all the time. And then Shreyas Iyer got a golden. So it wasn't great for India at that point. But then when Hardik Pandya got going, I don't know about you, but I thought he was going to finish the game off for them.
Yeah, it was, like you say, it was gearing itself up to be a really exciting match because as soon as Hardik looks like he could go, he's that player where there's no limit.
Yeah.
In the same way as Suryakumar Yadav doesn't have a limit on how far he'll take it. And he's proven that he's scoring centuries in T20s that are just the drive is huge. And with a lot of players, you see them like sort of tee off. I'm going to pick on one person. I don't know if it's a bit unfair, but Jason Roy, for example.
Okay.
When he was in form, I would look at him, and if he was seeing them well, if he was hitting them, I'd be like, oh, brilliant. He's going to score us a good 60 here. And that would be my thought. It'd be 60 off 30 is what he will provide. But I never thought that he would go on to finish the innings. I never, ever would watch Jason Roy and think there is somebody that's going to have that little asterisk that's going to go away with red ink.
Yeah.
Hardik Pandya, Sky, those are players where you do think they could have red ink, that they could be not out at the end of it and finish that match. And I think you're absolutely right. It was exciting. He's just got long arms that seem to hoof the ball a long way.
Yeah.
And it's
he's
exciting.
Just got another way he's got another way of scoring, doesn't he? And I think Hardik Pandya, the captain, it brings out another side of him. We saw it in the IPL. We're seeing it for India. And why not give him the permanent job? Because I guess someone like Rohit Sharma, he's got the Test captaincy at the moment. He's got the 50-over captaincy. He's got the 2020 captaincy. And maybe it's time for someone else to take the reins of one of them, because we've seen that it's good for sides to have different captains. It can be overburdening. Like Babar Azam for Pakistan don't play enough Test cricket for it to be a worry for them. But I think for India, who play so much cricket, they need to switch things up a bit. And Hardik Pandya, he's always going to be in the team because he's such a good player. So why not give him the
You're
reins?
right. He's one of the very few players that you see that really thrives off captaincy. That like comes to play his best when he is the captain. Now, granted, we only have a relatively small sample size for that. We can look at Gujarat Titans and then a few India matches. But from what we've seen from that small sample size, it's very impressive. And he gives off good vibes as well. I like Hardik when he's the captain. He's cool.
Yeah.
And that's important in cricket.
He didn't look like getting out, did he? And I think
not in a bit.
Because he was striking the ball well, he wasn't really playing streaky, like some people can, like Rishabh Pant, for example, who, even though he was playing a bit more freely today, he only lasted 5 balls and he looked like he could have got out on any of them. But if Hardik Pandya had got out, if New Zealand had managed to find a way, then there wasn't much left for India. So I think it was almost a good tie for India because they didn't have much else afterwards. So yeah, all in all, well done to India for praying to the rain gods for bringing the rain. And because I think it could have been a 1-1 series draw very, very easily. But yeah, it ended up being India take it 1-0 with a washout and a tie, which is, I guess it's all right.
Yeah, could be worse.
It's not the best thing. It could be worse. Could be England versus Australia.
So there's we'll move on to that now, actually. And we've got a bit of a situation here because I really like cricket. You really like cricket.
I love cricket.
We all really like. Joss Butler really likes cricket, but none of us care that England just got slapped about by the Aussies.
I don't care.
No,
Literally.
and that's a weird situation to be in because I really do support England and I want us to win everything. And if we'd won this tournament, if we'd won this series, I might be like, oh, that's cool. But it doesn't mean anything to me at the moment. Now, is that an issue? Yes, I think it is. I think it's a big issue for cricket in general. I think ODIs have been struggling in the last few years, particularly the last couple, where it's a format that kind of doesn't know where it is anymore. Um, and I don't know if it's just because they're harder to sort, they're harder to book. I feel like can Asia save ODIs because the rest of the countries don't seem to be able to do them. Like the attendance for Australia, England in those ODI series was so pathetic. It was like 17,000 in stadiums where they could have 80. And this is Australia versus England. And I mean, Australia was struggling to get attendance for their own matches in the World Cup, even. So, you know, what's going on, Zach?
Well, I think Australia, first focusing on the Australian issue, cricket isn't the number one sport in Australia. Aussie rules football gets the most attendance in Australia. Rugby league is also quite popular in Australia. Whereas cricket, like England, I guess, plays second fiddle. In England, football, soccer, whatever you call it, that's the number one sport, and that's what everyone goes to see, and you get full stadiums for club matches. So for England and Australia playing in a small one-day series at the end of a World Cup, you can understand it. I wouldn't say it's necessarily an issue with ODIs. I do get the point that ODIs are they're like the baby brother in a way. T20 is big. Test cricket is the pinnacle of what everyone dreams to play, unless you're from West Indies. And then the one-day internationals kind of falls underneath that. But I think it's more the fact that they've just had this World Cup where it's intense all the time. You put in all your effort into winning these massive games, and you look at the England team who had to win like 6 games on the bounce in order to win the World Cup, which they did, and the amount of intensity, the amount of effort that comes into that. And then they finish the tournament and it's like, we've done it, we've won. And they don't have time to celebrate that because then they've got to practice and get fit and prepare for the England-Australia series that's coming after. And it's like, well, the same intensity isn't going to be shown. And you can see people like David Warner and Travis Head giving these massive celebrations afterwards. But Australia were out of the World Cup about a week before England were. And obviously they're going to be more pumped to get back at England because England won the World Cup and they didn't get to have those games. And I think if they'd even had 3 weeks in between the World Cup and this series, I think it would be not a completely different story because Australia played well and England didn't. But I think it would have been slightly different intensity brought to this series.
It would have been less of a dead rubber because realistically, it was a weakened England side, which is a shame to see because like this opportunity, this was an incredible Australia performance, and it was a really good Australia side. I liked a lot of what they did. They did a little bit of England with David Milan kind of movement with Marnus Labuschagne in this latest match, particularly. Putting Marnus Labuschagne down at 7. So you know they shifted it based on what the game situation dictated, and I liked that. I thought Australia performed amazingly, absolutely incredible performances from Head and Warner all throughout the series. Stephen Smith was brilliant as well. So there was a lot to be taken, but it was I don't know how much you can take when the opposition, which was England, was an England B or C team. Like there were a lot of players. It was a very good side, but it wasn't a first choice side by any stretch. And it was
no, you wouldn't have James Vince in at 3 and Billings at 4, would you?
No, and then the rest of the side had just come off the back, like you say, of a really intense tournament, and it'd been I think it was 4 days were between England lifting up the trophy and playing the first ODI. That's so short. So you're right. It's a problem with the schedule. Yet again, this seems to be a recurring theme across all cricket. And we've had like each week it's a new player complaining about the schedule. Like we have Mitchell Stark complaining. Pat Cummins has dropped out the IPL for that reason. Ben Stokes retired from ODIs for that exact reason. So there is a definite scheduling problem. Something that isn't a problem because of scheduling. Joe Root's managed to find himself a month or two spare because he's put his name forward for the IPL. And that's interesting.
Well, he's not playing any 2020 cricket. He's not playing any one-day cricket, really. Like, he could have easily been in this series, but he wasn't, probably because he's playing in Pakistan in the Test series. But it's weird that he's so free because he's not playing 2020 cricket. And I think that's the difference. These people who play all the formats are busy the whole year round. And I think Ben Stokes has done the right thing, saying, you know what, I'm not going to play one-day cricket because it frees up his schedule. And I think it's not going to be long before other players do that. We've seen it with Trent Bolt deciding to cancel his central contract with New Zealand, I think.
Yeah, he did.
On those lines. So, but yeah, I think you could just see it in the way that England played. I don't think they cared. They were just going through the motions. And for someone like Jason Roy, it was about finding form, and he played all right today. It wasn't normal Jason Roy that we like to see. It wasn't nice to watch, but it was still, he had some time in the middle. But yeah, other than that, and then James Vince coming back in the side, like we can. The only reason we're going back to James Vince is because we didn't have enough players to fill the spots. So it's just not the same, is it? So am I sitting here thinking, oh, I'm really gutted because England got absolutely hammered by the Aussies, like we did in the Ashes down under last time? No, I don't feel like that, because I'm happy for David Warner to score a century and be thrilled about it. Like, fair enough, David Warner, well played. But at the end of the day, England didn't care. So, yeah. Which it might sound like an excuse. And it's very English of us, isn't it? But still don't care.
Yeah. So we'll go on to some Cricket Nerds questions. Now, the first one we've got was from PD, and it was 4 days ago. And he said, thoughts on the first Australia versus England ODI? I think we've summed it up. We don't care, but it was a good century by Milan.
Butler said he wasn't fussed.
Yeah,
he wasn't fussed about it.
Joss Butler said he wasn't fussed that they had a whitewash in a series. So yeah, it was all right. There was some good cricket that happened, and that's always fun to watch. But yeah, it's a shame. That's how I feel about it. It's just a shame that it was a series that it had potential. It was just at the wrong time. Another CNQ from PD said, do you think Williamson will be picked up in the auction ever? That's an interesting one. IPL auction, Kane Williamson.
I don't see it happening.
No,
I don't see it.
I also don't see it happening. I think there are so many options that you could have at the top of the order that have been in better form in the last couple of years. Yes, Kane Williamson is a good captain. Maybe that'll swing into his favour, but I don't think it's going to happen. Another question. James, do you think Mayank is worth 10 crore after his last season? No. I reckon he's worth about 7. There we go.
That's still quite a lot.
It is a lot, but he's a very talented batsman. And if he goes into form, if he reaches some form, he's been doing well in the one days. I'm not even going to try and pronounce what it is. I can't remember what the tournament is. Vihari or Rosario, Ranji, whatever. It's
You're
been doing very well in the
in the comments tournament. For that.
Yeah, I know. Shout out to Jagadisan, the keeper who scored 5 centuries in a row. Mental. Another CNQ. How many matches do you reckon a team will win in T20 if it consists of 6 specialist bowlers, 6, a wicketkeeper batsman, and 4 batting all-rounders with decent bowling capabilities? So you can have, I think that's saying you could have 10 bowling options and only 5 people that can bat in a T20. How are you going to do? I think not very well, because if you bowl everybody their full, like as many times as you can, you're getting 2 overs per person, so nobody's really going to get settled, and you're going to have such a weak batting lineup. So how many matches? 30%. I'm going to
The
say.
only way I see that working is if your bowling lineup is Jasprit Bumrah, Jofra Archer,
Harris Ralph,
Rashid Khan, Shaheen Shah Afridi, and Hasaranga de Silva. That's the only way I can see you having any chance of defending a score below 100. So yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. I'm well impressed with all these CNQs. Thank you so much for sending them all in. We've got another. What do you think about Pant's future in T20 International? Do you reckon Sanju Samson can replace Pant and IPL Rahul?
I reckon I can see Pant just getting into form in the IPL.
Yeah,
it's due. I can just see it happening.
Form is temporary, class is permanent.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's the perfect place to leave it. So thank you so much once again for all the continued support. Like and subscribe. Follow our social medias. We're posting quite a lot on Instagram and Twitter, where you can check out who might all the IPL teams buy. That's been a little running series on Instagram. So yeah, check it all out. You can listen to our podcast as well on all the places. Don't forget to subscribe. Tell your friends about us. Thank you so much. Goodbye.